Hi, my name is Lars Andersen, and 5 years ago I made the video A New Level of Archery, and I think after 2 or 3 days it becomes the most seen archery video ever made at that time. And at the end of the year, when YouTube made this 10 most seen video in several countries, it was among the 10 most seen video. And the video was broadcasted on television, I think more than 200 times and all over the world, so really many people will see this video. But the video, in less than 6 minutes, it tried to tell the whole story of archery and all the things I do and think about archery, and it's obviously not possible. So I long think that I should make a much longer video and tell the funny story about this video and also the thoughts behind. And now I have time to do it, so together with Shade from Shadiversity channel and Mia and other people too will help me tell this long story of archery.
Greetings. As Lars mentioned, I'm Shad from the YouTube channel Shadiversity, where I try to find out what the medieval period was really like. It's a big passion of mine, and over the years I've developed somewhat of a reputation for being someone who's willing to challenge preconceived ideas, whether these are ideas that come from our modern day perspective being imposed on the past, or ideas that have been ingrained through tradition. What Lars wants me to do specifically is to take a look at his video, A New Level of Archery, and apply my standard of critical analysis that I apply to anything that I'm reviewing to see how historically authentic it is. Because there are points in his video that can be fairly criticized, and I'll be bringing those up, and I'm not going to be holding back any punches. I'll be bringing up every possible point of fair criticism that can be applied to the video. But also, this is the thing, when you look at it fairly, honestly, there has been many criticisms lobbed against this video unfairly that are completely invalid, and Lars has been discredited and attacked in a very disingenuous way. There were a lot of things that were actually lost in translation, and a lot of really interesting, very valid things that Lars is actually presenting to the world regarding what historical archery in many different cultures, periods and times, what it actually might have been like. And it's not to say what it is specifically, but to expand what we can incorporate into our understanding of historical archery. And it's really unfortunate the level of stubborn resistance and unfair criticism that does exist when people are willing to propose new ideas. I certainly have found this myself when I was simply wanting to experiment the plausibility of shooting on the right side of a medieval longbow with a 3-finger Mediterranean grip. And it was amazing the disingenuous, just flat out lies people were trying to say about my experimentations, that the string hits your forearm every time, that it is impossible to pull back an arrow reliably and consistently with it being on the right side without it falling off the shaft. And they saying that it would fall off most of the time. And these things are simply untrue. You can pull it back reliably and consistently with it on the shaft without a problem at all. But people are saying that that is impossible, doing it consistently and effectively. And these things are simply untrue. And so it's amazing the resistance and the faulty logic that people have been resorting to try and re-establish their orthodox view of what historical archery should be according to their perspective. With that out of the way, Lars would like to share some additional thoughts before I get to, I guess, the breakdown of his video, asking questions based on the fair criticisms that can be lobbed against it, so Lars can actually share with us the answers of what he actually meant, what he can substantiate even further than what he was limited in showing in such a short video so long ago, and perhaps some of the things that he might have even gotten wrong.
I was driving down to my archery club, and then I realized there's something I have to say in the beginning of the video. This is really important. I have some concern about this video. First is obviously my language. I'm not good at English. I'm from Denmark. English is not what I'm good at. I've tried to become better.
Hi, I'm Lars' goddaughter Nicolina, and for several years I tutored him so he could learn how to speak a more comprehensible English.
But you have to listen to my not so good English for a very long time in this very long video. And my next concern is there's some who think I hate modern archery, and it's important for me to clarify from the beginning. I don't hate modern archery. Some of my best friends doing modern archery. Anders here, he helped me a lot right now with making this long video. I often do archery at the morning with him. Did I hate target archery?
No, it doesn't.
When I talk about modern archery, it's not bad thing about modern archery is because I want to understand historical archery. And if we stand in modern time and try to look at historical archery, we only know it from historical sources. We can make some tests and make some trial, but basically we know very little. For most of the culture, we know basically nothing. And we have some knowledge from some culture, but a lot is lost. But even the famous English longbowman, we can't even tell which side of the bow they actually hold the arrow, because so much is lost. When we try to look at historical archery, what we often see is we look into modern archery instead, because we come from this modern archery, so we have all this big BS. So when I talk about modern archery, it's because we must understand the BS from modern archery and from target archery. So if we actually want to understand historical archery. So I don't know the truth. I'm not a historian. Most you're going to hear in this long video is my thoughts about what I think is going on, but I can definitely not say a lot of the thing. It's just what I think, and I can change my opinion. So basically, if anyone say this is true or not, no, I don't know the truth. This is what I think. And then obviously what I'm doing, I make test and trial. I see historical written down text and I try which is possible to actually do in reality. And now this is important. The kind of archery I do, most people shouldn't do, because I do this full-time professional. I'm surrounded with serious people working with me, and for instance we do a lot about safety, but other people shouldn't do that kind of archery. And this is my important concern before we actually start talking about the video. The story of the video starts some years before. At that time I was doing archery 6 days a week, 7 hours every day, maybe more, and I was in contact with historical experts from around the world, and I read a lot of historical sources. But there was a lot of things I was not able to do, and no other was able to do it. For instance, this about shooting 3 arrows in 1.5 seconds, nobody could do it, and somebody even saying that was not possible, and there was a number of other stuff I couldn't do it. So I have to change everything. So basically I start looking at historical sources, and that means that I also have to change my equipment. The first thing was actually I look at my bow, and it was at that time I think it was an old kind of bow, but today I would say it was with knock point and arrow rest, so the arrow was fixed. And I would say basically I was also part of this modern BS then. I also used arrow at that time that was quite modern. So I start gradually to change all the thing. First I actually start to build a lot of replication of historical arrows. Any kind of historical arrows I look at, I try to make copy of it and see what works best. And that's the next thing with my bow. At that time I shoot rather ordinary, 3-finger draw to fixed position, fixed body position and fixed draw length. But then I start gradually to change. And first, very good special custom buy bow from Isoko and shoot them on the right side, because then with some of the new grip then I was able to shoot in motion and without the arrows actually was loose. And then I read Saxton Pope, and that was one of the things that actually helped me. He tell about Indian who don't have an anchor point and don't have a fixed draw length and actually also draw rather short. And I start doing some of the thing, and I also read about people who have shoot with hand moving forward, so shoot with this double draw. And more important, I read about people who don't use the bow or the arrowhead to aim at, but just look at the target and nothing else. And I start doing all this thing, and it's actually quite difficult to go from fixed system where you can actually hit to anything was floating, any body position was floating, anything was floating. Then I start this thing about fast shooting. I was going for Crewer because I wanted to shoot this 3 hours in 1.5 seconds. Crewer, any kind of Crewer I tried, it was not fast enough. Then I tried to hold the arrow in the bow hand, and I tried any possible combination, but still it was not fast enough, not near fast enough. And then after some time I've seen some few people who have the arrow in different position in the draw hand, but that was not fast enough either. So with a lot of the experiment, I end up holding the arrow in a draw hand horizontal as the first one. and it actually fit some of the historical description. And with a lot of practice, I end up being able to actually shoot this 3 hours and 1.5 seconds as the first one. And after that, I read about Indian who shoot 10 hours up in the air before the first one hit the ground. And after some time, I managed to do that. And just to beat the record, the year after, I shoot 11 hours up in the air before the first one hit the ground. But still, having the hand full of air and doing all this stuff and this floating system, it was difficult. It was actually quite difficult. But then I remember, probably a half year before this video, New Level Archery, suddenly, more or less, it was like going through a wall. Suddenly, it became easy. I had this feeling. I just pulled the hand back, and then there was new ready, arrows ready all the time. And I don't think about it anymore. And some of the things I think was difficult before, more or less become easier. I start being able to hit things I've never been able to do before. Like this thing about shooting an arrow against the blade, so the arrow split, and a lot of other things I've never been able to do, I could suddenly do. And then I read this text about hitting an incoming arrow, which there's several historical descriptions of that, and I would say a half year before, that's impossible. But now, over a long time, I started experimenting with safe arrows, and then I said, I can actually do it. And then I tried, and wow, it was possible. So I think I have to tell other people about it. I have to make a video. And this was never about saying other kind of archery is wrong. It was about, wow, this is possible. So I go to my friend Edward, and Edward is a movie maker, and he took my bad quality, really bad quality trainings video, and then he put them together in a video in about less than 6 minutes, and we discuss it's not about the story, it's about showing, wow, this is possible. And then, after I have been with Edward, I make a text to the video, and then I go to my friend Klaus.
So Lars comes to me and says, in Danish, he says, Klaus, you need to do the speak for this video, because my English is terrible.
At that time, I was really bad at English, now I become better.
You've become quite a bit better, and while Lars's English today, I still think there's a bit room for improvement. It was really, really bad. So I said, Lars, give me the text. I'm going to rewrite it because the written English was also not top quality. And I said, let me do this. It was really bad. And I said, let me rewrite it and let me do the speak. And Lars said, okay, let's do that.
Yes, because we don't think any of us that the speak was important, because it was just showing this thing.
It's true.
This thing could be done. So I come with text, I give it to class, and I still remember. Today it's really funny. I have this long text about back quivers.
Yes, you're going to mention the back quiver. So the back quiver story is that in the original text, there was a very long, very detailed, very precise description of the whole back quiver thing. And it was actually longer than the entire video ended up being. So this would have been more than 6 minutes extra if we'd kept it in. And I said, Lars, can't we just say
the back quiver is a Hollywood myth?
And then we write in the description a little bit more about how that's not exactly true, but why it makes some sort of sense.
And we agree on that. I think yes, anybody will.
Yeah, we thought people are going to read it if they're curious, and they think, what? They're going to read that. It turns out we were idiots. That was wrong. Yes. They did not.
So basically, the whole text was made in a half hour. After being with Klaus, I go home and rather fast put the speak in the video, and then I put the video on the internet. And I expected this video was something to be seen by a few people who was really, really interested in this subject, and then anything exploded instantly. And I'll say from the next day, my email was going down, my homepage was going down because of so much traffic, my telephone was ringing all the time, one television station, another television station when I finished with the first one. And it was actually quite scaring, but also a little fun. So now come the next part of the video where we try to discuss the thing I could have explained much better, and also the mistake I was made.
Centuries ago, master archers were able to perform incredible feats of archery. These skills have long since been forgotten, but the Danish archer Lars Andersen is trying to reinvent what has been lost.
The first question that I feel a fully critical and skeptical person would ask here is the statement that certain techniques have long since been forgotten, because trick shooting has been around for a very long time, and there are techniques that Lars shows in his video, A New Level of Archery, that many archers have known about for a very long time, such as shooting instinctively with both eyes open and other types of trick shots as well. So the question for Lars would be, what type of techniques is he actually saying have actually been forgotten? Now, when watching the video in its broader context, you can find the two primary techniques that Lars is promoting in the video, and it's shooting on the right side of the bow while holding arrows in the same hand that you're shooting with. Now, I'm nowhere near as good as Lars is, but this is a 70-pound war bow, and this is me shooting with a 3-fingered Mediterranean grip. And just to show that I'm not fluking it, I'll do another 3. Ah, those 3 were much better, each one on target. And so, 70-pound, 3-fingered Mediterranean grip. Is this the technique that you were speaking about, Lars? And what evidence was there that it has been forgotten?
This is a little difficult, so I moved to my garden to explain. And I don't use my bow, but I use a ball instead. If football was forgotten 500 years ago, if the last football game was played 500 years ago, then obviously there must be some historical sources and some picture, and I could in my garden learn to do a little football. I could dribble around and I could learn to shoot some target. And I could even convince myself I was really good at this ancient game, football. But in the moment I was placed in a real match with professional football player, in 1 second I realized I have no chance at all, because professional football player can do a variation of things. And this is actually the same, I think, with historical archery. Any archer living today will have no chance if you have to fight a historical war archer from one of the strong historical culture from Hun and Mongols and Comanche Indian. We simply don't have the skill, and we are not trained from childhood our entire life. So obviously some archer living today have some usable skills. For instance, bow hunter have some skills, and obviously horseback archers have some skill. But even if you ask a real prof horseback archer like Mirha.
Behind the skill of an archer stays the quantity and quality of his practice. To keep hard practice, you need also a lot of determination and motivation. The motivation of the ancient archers was very clear: surviving. The motivation for shooting arrows in our days is much more weaker than that, since the archery has not anymore a practical purpose. So also our skill. If you take a guy from the street, he may know how to punch and how to kick, but face in face with a real top professional fighter, he has no chance to stay even half of the round.
I have obviously right, motivation is also a part of it. We don't have the same motivation for a child grown up in one of this war archery culture. It's so easy, he don't need any motivation. It is what he needs to survive, and it is how you can become great in this society. It's about the best at archery. So it's very simple, he don't need any motivation at all. So when we talk about reinventing archery, it's about try to reinvent, is to try to find back to the thing in archery. And this is not about one skill. So when people ask, what did you actually reinvent? I will say, yes, obviously I reinvent the idea about holding arrows in the hand horizontal. And yes, I was the first one to shoot this written down, shoot 3 arrows in 1.5 seconds. And yes, some of the tricks I'm doing was the first one to do, like for instance is about hitting the incoming arrow. And yes, some of the thing about hand layers I was probably also the first one to do. But for me it's not really important. The important, if you try to reconstruct historical war archer, is an archer should be able to do them all. This historical text says it's clear. An archer needs to be fast, he needs to be shoot in motion, he needs to be able to handle his equipment. There's some people who have done really cool trick shooting before me, but what's going on in this video is something different. What I try is to prove that some of the written historical text, what historical war archer, the tricks they do, that they can actually be true. for me, trick shooting ain't the purpose. The purpose is about try to learn all the skills and then try to find back to historical war archer and just to put the football back. If I know nothing more than about football, I would say if someone told me that there once was a football player who jumped up in the air and with the head down kick the ball, I would say this is stupid, this is useless tricks football. But it happened in reality. So what seems like useless football tricks actually work in reality, and is what makes some football player famous. And it's the same with archery. Some of the famous historical war hero archers, we only know them because they do tricks. That's what's written down, that's why we know them. But again, it's difficult for us to understand historical trick shooting, so I'll give another example. We know from description that Comanche Indian boys, they were shooting at this small flying thing, and it's obviously for fun. This is just a trick. But I also think that everybody realize that if you meet a Comanche boy when he's grown up, this is part of what makes him a really, really dangerous archer. And the football example was just to show here can we actually see historical football players, but we have very little knowledge about historical war archer. We should always remember. And the sad thing is actually that the Comanche Indian was actually some of the really good historical war archers, and they're only 20 years from actually where we invented the movie camera.
It also works with sharp arrows and powerful bows.
So the obvious criticism that can be raised here is that you've never actually shown these techniques working with heavier bows or sharp arrows in the video itself, a new level of archery.
If I have done the video today, I have probably done it different. My 100-pound bow and sharp bow arrows.
It also works with sharp arrows and powerful bows.
Obviously, there was a lot of confusion about this thing. I honestly understand. Have I done the video today? I've probably done it with my 100-pound bow. I don't like to shoot it. I'm an old man and it hurt my back. And I've done it with sharp bow arrows. In the video, I do it with my 50-pound bow and sharp arrows. But today, I would say I've probably done it different. Or I'll just ask my friend Ronnie, who's younger and stronger than me. And before anyone asks, no, this is not steel. Some part of the confusion is also that my usual bow, the one I use most, I have a lot of bow, is this one, is 49-pound. But when I do trick shooting, I always shoot with bow that's not so heavy. As written in Arab archery, when you do trick shooting, you should use a half-strength bow. So a lot of the confusion is also part of me, because I, in a lot of the video, shoot with a half-strength bow.
Who can escape 10 arrows fired quickly after another?
On the subject of speed shooting, this is a very important point because it actually is one of the larger points of criticism that people have been using to try and discredit your whole video, and that's how effective and important is speed shooting in warfare generally, because people have claimed that in warfare, archers were used in stationary units that actually weren't moving. And with enough numbers, all you needed to do was achieve a base level of speed, like 6 arrows in a minute kind of thing, and that's going to be enough.
And just to clarify, there is a bit of a debate as to what the standard rate of fire for the medieval longbow was. Some claim it is between 6 and 7 aimed shots per minute, and some say the medieval longbowman should be expected to shoot at least 12 arrows per minute. And I have actually heard many people claim that attaining a higher rate of fire than this is actually unneeded in the context of medieval warfare.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on that matter.
After my video, a lot of people discuss fast shooting in war. Is it possible? Can you do fast shooting in war? And all this discussion. And I obviously understand this discussion, because this is some of the difficult thing, because so much is forgotten in archery. And here we come into something nobody know, because nobody had tried to actually be in a war with a bow and arrow. And so basically it was like in the start I said about this football player, we're into the game, we don't know. So what I tell is only what I think or guess. And this is based on talking with expert, talking with archer, look into historical sources. But here, more important, since 2003 I have played a game, Combat Archery, where we shoot after each other in team. And I've also been part of some big battle that's going on in Denmark with harmless arrows. And it's obviously not like real war, but there's something that can be converted. So this is my talk about historical war archery and fast shooting. What happens if a war archer shoot an arrow against other people? It doesn't matter whether it's actually one archer or 1,000 archers who shoot against some enemies. That actually always happens something, because nobody stands still and wait on being shot and shot and shot and shot. That's what I realized. No matter it's one person or no matter it's a large group of archers shooting against people, they don't stand still. They always react. So they can run, they can hide, but most likely they will just attack. And now the archer is dead, killed by the people he shoot at, and that will also happen for a big group of archers. The biggest fear for an archer is actually that he is run down or killed without being able to do anything about it. And no matter, it's obviously the worst is horse, people that attack on horse, but it's always a fear for any archer that he will be run down. So obviously that happens because you have an arrow, you shoot it. When you shoot your arrow, an archer, opposite other weapon, have no weapon. When you have shoot the arrow, you have no arrow, you are defenseless. And you're defenseless till you actually put a new arrow on a bow. When you have a new arrow on a bow, then you have a weapon again. But in the moment, from you not having an arrow to you put an arrow on string, then you are harmless. And enemy can actually see that. So if again you shoot at an enemy, they will run against you. But the moment you've seen you have put on a new arrow, then they will start to hide behind it. Shield, they will still continue to run against you, but they will hide behind the shield. So I believe this is so basic that any archer in history, any war archer in history has realized that when you shot the first arrow, no matter how you hold the arrow, on which side of the bow, if you have it in crew or what, any archer will release his arrow, and instantly the next thing would be he will take a new arrow and put it on the bow. And no matter how he put it, he will learn to do it as fast as possible, because an archer without an arrow on a bow is not armed. So any historical archer will learn to do it as fast as possible. And when you have learned to put the arrow on fast, which you obviously do, just to be not unharmed, then you have the basic of being able to shoot fast. So let's take it again. I'll make this test with my friend Anders and Morten, and there was not a setup. They have to see if they can actually reach me before I can shoot them. This time I have 3 arrows and they try to hit me. I'll show it in slow motion. I have 3 arrows, they're 2 person and they have big shields so they can avoid my incoming arrow. So what I do is, Anders is running with his shield and I shoot at the top of the shield, because I know when you shoot at people, they will raise their shield to protect their head. It's an instinctive reaction. So now I do it and he continues to run, but now with his shield raised, so I can actually shoot him in his leg. Morten is coming around the tree, and because I'm pointing at him with my arrows, then he raises his shield and there comes a free spot and I can shoot. And obviously this was done with harmless arrow, but if you imagine for a moment that this was war arrows, what actually happened at first, the arrow was sitting in Anders' shield, so it would be more difficult for him to run, and when I hit him in the leg, it will actually make some damage and the arrow will stick out of his leg. So it wasn't, at least not be able to run very fast more. And when I hit Morten behind the shield, it will also more or less take him out. Anyway, what I try to show, and this is not a setup, is it's possible for an archer to use his arrow so he actually manipulates the people who attack him. So there's obviously historical archers that can do that much better than me, and you could say they probably won't die of it, but I will slow them down. And if you compare it with the archer having one shot, he will definitely die. By being able to fast shoot, I actually have a chance to survive. I even have a chance to actually kill them. And this is the first step. But then people will say, but archers stand in big formation. A lot of archers is on battlefield, 500 archers, 1,000 archers. And I have tried, not 500 archers, but bigger army. And there's a lot of the same thing. You still get rushed by enemy. You still know if you can't defeat the enemy before you hit them, they reach to you, then you're finished. So you still die. That still means if you have 500 archer, if they can shoot one arrow each, it's much better if they can actually reach to shoot 4 arrows each, and you get much better chance of actually hitting them. And if you know you have more arrows, you actually shoot them much safer, because you don't have to be so ridiculously scared if you know that you can actually shoot more arrows. And you should also remember that yes, it's possible to stand in this big formation, but I think any archer, even we hear about this big battle, the archers was also used for other things. They have to travel to the battle, they actually risk of being taken in ambush and other people attack them. They actually could be used to attack other people, they could guard. So any war archer, I think, will be in a variation of things, and some of them he have to be on his own, or only a small group of archers, and you have to shoot at people with horses and other things. So in the book Archery is written when an archer releases arrows, he's without any weapon before he put on the new arrows. And in the book Strategion, who is about big battle, that's written an archer who cannot shoot fast is useless.
Some claim it is between 6 and 7 aimed shots per minute, and some say the medieval longbowman should be expected to shoot at least 12.
I don't know the truth about historical war archer. What I know is only what I guess or what I've seen from trial, but I can't know the truth. I don't think it gives much meaning to talk about fast shooting for a minute, because I think fast shooting is something you do when the enemy is close and you shoot some fast arrows, so you actually stay alive, whether you're one archer or a lot of archers. Or you do it when you attack. There's also when you come close, you shoot some arrows. Or if you try to escape, you shoot some arrows too, so the enemy ducks, you can run away. So, as I said before, when you shoot at something, my experience, when you shoot at other people, they either run, attack, or hide. So if they don't do any other thing, there's really no reason to continue to shooting fast. So the concept of shooting fast for a minute, I really don't think made any sense. And you can say most culture, you have 3 arrows. The culture where you have arrows in your draw hand, you have 3 arrows, and basically because that's what you need for fast shooting. So you don't run out of arrow, as people think. If you can fast shoot, then you run out of arrow. No, you use them in this few senses where it makes sense to shoot fast, or when you're actually close to being killed, because there's no reason to have extra arrows if you actually get killed. I basically think, I really don't believe any historical archer shoot super fast, but I think any historical archer was able to put an arrow on instantly, and he was able to shoot relatively fast, because it really makes sense. And then you can actually say, it's a little like you invented the gun, and obviously you invented the gun with more bullets, and because it was just better with more than one shot, and it's actually the same. So
using this technique, Lars has set several speed shooting records and shoots more than twice as fast as his closest competitors.
For myself, I think speed shooting needs to be understood by category. I don't personally think it's fair to compare the record of one speed shooter who is using a lighter bow compared to another speed shooter who is using a heavier bow. Also, perhaps there are different things that need to be understood. Should arrows be held in a quiver when speed shooting, or should it be allowed that you're allowed them in quivers in front of you? And this perhaps goes with holding arrows in your hand as well. Are these fair comparisons? But if the goal is to try and find the fastest physical way to shoot arrows, I guess the only thing that really matters then is actually the draw weight, as to if they're being held in the hands, in a quiver, in a pile in front of you. I mean, having said that, the pile in front of you, I'm a bit more skeptical on, because if you do need to move, you should be able to take your arrows with you easily, and so perhaps that one can be disqualified in the speed shooting category. But it currently isn't. It's basically how fast can you shoot arrows. Though there is an important point to bring up about the speed shooting that you've shown in a new level of archery, because it does look like you're using a fairly light bow there, and for the shot in which you are shooting the arrows very, very fast, it doesn't look like you're drawing the string back that far at all. And so I don't think there's any doubt that you have loosed arrows from a bow, regardless of draw length, draw weight, faster than anyone else alive, to my knowledge, okay? But the question is, how fast can you shoot when fully drawing your bow? And that's at a minimum to the mouth, okay? I think everyone would accept that. As to the draw weight of the bow, I think everyone should know the draw weight of the bow that you're using. Should there be a minimum standard draw weight? Well, I actually feel it would be fair to have speed shooting categories by draw weight. I actually wanted to see what I could do with this 100-pound bow here, how fast I can shoot with it, and see if there's a record for speed shooting on a 100-pound bow. In addition to those questions about the draw length and draw weight of your bow in regards to your speed shooting records, some people have accused you of using special custom-made nocks with a much wider kind of V shape at the end to help get it on the bowstring a lot easier and a lot faster, kind of accusing you of cheating. And so, were custom nocks like that even available at the time, or did you actually make custom ones to help get the nock on the bowstring faster?
My speed, when it's just about releasing arrows, release, will I say, 3 arrows, and this is 1.6 second, and it's not a second, it's 6 out of 10 of a second. So this is the release speed. So yes, and then there comes the discussion, draw rate and full draw and things like that, and there's a lot of obviously questions. Let's start with a record. I think that's a good way to start. I will claim I have a world record, most arrows up in air before the first one hit the ground. So it's a Native American history where they shoot them up in air and see who can do most, and the record, old record in 10, and I was doing 10, and then I was doing 11, and I'll say at that record we know this engine don't full draw the bow and it don't have an anchor point, and the bow was probably not very heavy. When Sexton Poe tested Indian bow, they was generally not so heavy. So you can say I've beaten this record, I have use a bow similar probably to the Indian. I have not full draw all of arrow, as actually overdraw some of the first arrow to get them longer up in the air. So, but I would basically say yes, I have. It just fits the original description. I don't think it would make any sense for this record to actually say this should be full drawn to an anchor point or something like that, because the Indian don't do it like that. So I would say yes, this is the valid way. I say this is a world record. The next thing is, people get confused about, and I think a lot of people actually get confused with my fast shooting, because both I do this low draw and I do the hand motion forward, and again my arrows is often longer than my drawing, because when you overdraw you need longer arrow, because otherwise you can actually hurt your fingers. So a lot of my arrows are actually longer. So when I think people get confused, and when I meet new archers, they often want to, can I draw your bow? Yes, because they have this feeling this must be very low power, and often people get confused about that actually not so low power that they expected, and some of the bow are actually quite a lot heavier than people expected. So this is the first one. The next one is saying yes, I will show this full draw, and here I filmed here for this. I shoot with my Vig 53 bow, Vig 53-pound bow. And as you can see, it's 3 hours and 1.5 seconds. And I'm showed in slow motion just to so you can see the hand moving forward, and you can see how far I actually draw the arrow. First of all, I would say I was shooting with the more or less the same draw rate as the others, because I know their draw rate and my bow was the same draw rate. So it was once, yes, you can say, I shoot down here, did a full draw, I'd make it stop in motion. No, I think at that time I didn't care. I shoot that way, shoot with the short draw, and love this Indian way of shooting. So have I done the video today? I would have done it probably different, because I know it confused a lot of people. Yes, instead of doing that, I could have found an anchor point, and then I could have drawn every time to the anchor point. And instead of using 5.9 seconds, they will probably have used 1 second more. I would still be much faster than any of the other, and it will probably have been much smarter just to make it this way, because anyone will obviously realize, and they've done the video today, I would have done it this way. Fast shooting motorboat shown this, how fast you can move your fingers and things, more than actually setting a record. So after this, there was a lot of discussion, obviously, and some would have right and some was wrong, and some didn't really understand it. And again, people claim I use a bow at 10 pound or so, and you can't use this 10-pound bow, because if you need to knock arrows on a bowstring, it actually need to have some power before. If you don't actually fast knock an arrow on a string that's really light, then it will move to the side, so you can't actually do it with a really light bow. I can't do it if you're not so fast, but it's another story. Then a lot of people start discussing my knock, because, as I said before, I built really many different knocks. At any historical knocks I find, and any historical arrows I built at the time to figure out what worked. And then it was actually quite funny that after the video, a lot of people discussed my knock. Some people said, Lars, this is wrong, you don't use a standard knock. Then a standard knock must be a plastic knock, and obviously a lot of people realized it was not like that, but that was more funny thing. The more funny was people talk about historical knocks, and instead of accusing me for making some wrong right knock, and some of my knock is right, it's obviously much easier just to look at history and say, how did historical knock look like? And there's a variation of historical knock. Here's a right knock. So this was basically, again, it was something new, because when the video came 5 years ago, you basically, what you could buy was either a plastic knock or this historical knock. And afterwards, that's actually, and this is also, I think, a lot of the things that come after the video, because of me, and people start discussing it, and people start get interesting. Today you can actually buy a variation of different white knocks, and they actually fit the whole picture, or an other kind of historical knocks is actually available now today. It was not available at the time.
From old texts, we know that Saracen archers were expected to be able to fire 3 arrows in 1.5 seconds.
So the question people have here, and it's a very common criticism as well, is how are people of the past able to accurately measure 1.5 seconds? Some people have even claimed that there was no way for them to measure 1.5 seconds, or at least no way to measure it uniformly. Our 1 second might be different to the second of the past. It's hard to tell. So which source actually claimed that certain archers were able to shoot 3 arrows in this amount of time? And how sure are you that it is actually 1.5 seconds as well?
How do we know that the Saracens shoot 3 arrows in 1.5 seconds? We have this test described, and it was, when I made this video, it was actually well known because it's translated to English a lot of years before. So basically, and there was also the funny thing about the video, that I come from this small community of people who were interested in historical archery, and everybody knows this calculation because it's quite simple and quite smart. Because the Saracens have this test, you have to shoot. There was actually 3 tests. One is at 60 bows distance, you have to hit a target, and the next is you have to shoot under a rope, and it's a kind of smart test, because to actually do that, you have to use a strong bow. So this was actually a quite smart test to measure the strength of the bow. And the number 3 test was a density test, and this was about you should be able to shoot 3 arrows before the first one hit the target. And at that time there was a lot of question about it. It's rather easy to calculate because we know the speed, because of the time, and we know the distance, and then we have more or less this 3 hours and 1.5 seconds. And more important, we have some similar thing. We have Amatop, the second Egyptian war pharaoh, and we also have a description where he, from his carrot, shoot 4 arrows, and we know the distance between each target, and since it's a metal plate, they have to be rather straight, and we actually end up more or less same calculation. And if you calculate on this Indian who actually shoot arrows up in the air, we also, if people have to shoot 10 arrows up in the air, you will also more or less at least get under 1 second per arrow. So we'll say we have 3 historical sources where we can calculate speed from different parts of the world, and you can say it's more or less show this very, very, very fast shooting. And for me, after I actually done it, and today I would say I was the first one in modern time who shoot 3 hours and 1.5 seconds, but I would say today there's hundreds of people who have shoot this speed. So today I think where we can discuss it back then and say, is it actually possible? I would say yes. Today I would say it were rather easy, actually not rather easy, but for professional war archers it will be rather easy to shoot this very, very fast speed.
And Assyrian artwork shows that the method is at least 5,000 years old.
In your video, you present several pieces of historical artwork showing the arrow being on the outside of the bow, or on the right side if you're a right-handed shooter. And people have accused you of cherry-picking in that by only showing the artwork with the arrow on this side, you were disingenuously trying to represent that most historical artwork showed archery being done this way, and to further substantiate the previous point, that it was widespread. Now, I think from context, it's actually quite obvious to see that you're showing the artwork to simply show that there is historical evidence for this technique being done, which is perfectly fair in my opinion. And this is one of those disingenuous criticisms where they take your emphasis to try and simply establish the possibility of something being shot and then assume that you're saying that this was the only way people shot historically, which I never heard you say that in the video. But having said that, there are certain lines that can imply that, and I think this is a good example of the type of things that can get lost in translation, because having spoken with you directly, I know that's not what you believe. But while we're on the subject of historical artwork, this is a very contentious point, and this is something that a lot of people have argued with me about, because when I have looked at historical medieval artwork, for instance, I have found many artworks depicting the arrow on this side of the bow, the right side, outside, and it seems to be about 50-50. 50% of the artwork seems to depict it on the left side, the other 50% on the right side, and it has been amazing the type of arguments I've come across of people trying to disregard the validity of historical artwork, saying that all the pieces of artwork showing the arrow on this side are simply inaccurate, and their logic has been because you can't shoot effectively that way. Well, for medieval war bows, I've actually endeavoured to disprove that, and Lars has helped me out in that regard, and I think we've done it quite effectively, because we're not the only ones who can do this. Other competent archers have shown that you can shoot this way effectively and consistently, and there's actually a whole host of archers throughout the world that shoot this way as well. And so the argument that you can't do this effectively, therefore the artwork must be wrong, is completely invalid. So what I would really like to know from you, Lars, specifically, is your reasons why you feel historical artwork is valid and reliable evidence to try and determine if people shot with the arrow on this side of the bow in the past.
I film this for my atelier because when we talk about historical sources, important thing. I'm an artist, I hang a museum, the Danish Queen has opened one of my exhibitions, but I have also written some books. So I know something about sources. And when it comes to historical sources, people often say, yes, written text is more correct than historical pictures. But I think it's different. There's different information in picture and text. And to give an example, if I today have to paint a smartphone, I will painted more or less so it looked like the smartphone, so the buyer, people who should buy my picture, will know, okay, this is a smartphone. But if I should write down a text about a smartphone, then I will only tell people what I think they need to hear. I will not tell them all the things that everybody know, for instance, and I could, another thing, I could just say, this is a smartphone, and people will know that it's a smartphone. And this comes to the question about how we know from historical sources. Everybody know the famous English longoman. We have pictures, we have text, but not even one of the texts actually said whether they hold the arrow on the right side of the bow or the left side of the bow. And probably because people who write the text know that everybody knows that. So we can answer that from written text. So people have said every English and every European archer with 3-finger grip had hold the arrow on the left side, and when half of the pictures show on the other side, it's artistic mistake. But it don't give any meaning, because if when I make picture, I have to sell them, and should I be an historical painter and then go to a buyer with my painting and he have to buy it, and then he said, oh, your arrow is on the wrong side. Everybody know that the arrow is on the left side, but you are painted on the right side. And in a lot of the picture you can see that the artist actually know exactly what they do. Should I then risk that my buyer laugh at me and things like that? No. Should there be a conspiracy from artists all over Europe over 100 years where they decided in the secret community that we want to half of the time paint the arrow on the wrong side? It's so complicated, and when we come to historical sources, the most logical and easy is often true, and the most logical and easy is here that the historical archer just had hold the arrow on both sides of the bow as described in the picture. And furthermore, a little about historical text. It's fun that we know this book, Sin and Archery, and it have influence on modern archery, but today we know everything is wrong. It was a German guy come to Japan and he didn't understand the Japanese language, and everything gone wrong. It's well described. And it's always with historical sources. We can know if translation error is actually the archer who had written the text or another person. We didn't know it. But with picture we know more or less that the artist has tried at least to make it look like reality. So, and furthermore with text, I was in Istanbul making a commercial and meet Dr. Murat, and we discuss this about historical text and talk about if we have a famous war school, there will be secret we will never reveal, so we will probably deliberately tell something that was not true.
Arab Archery, the most extensive historical book ever made about archery, states, "This is the best type of shooting, and there's nothing beyond it in power or accuracy."
Nothing beyond it in power or accuracy. Now that statement is one that has caused a lot of controversy. And in case people who are watching this are unaware, Lars has actually already addressed part of this when he has been accused of misrepresenting that this statement was referring to the style of shooting he was referring to. But as Lars showed in his Q&A video, there's an extensive portion written just prior to that quote giving the appropriate context as to what it's referring to. So that has been addressed, and those people trying to accuse Lars of cherry-picking the quotes are in actual fact cherry-picking and misrepresenting the source that Lars has been citing. But what about the actual accuracy of the statement itself in proper context? Is it the best in power and accuracy? And that is still yet to be determined, because a lot of people have, of course, tried to challenge that statement. First thing that needs to be understood, it is a quote from a historical text, so that needs to be understood. So you're not necessarily challenging Lars, you're challenging the historical source, but it is worth being challenged. Is it the best in power and accuracy? And that is something that will need to be proven by you, Lars, and anyone else trying to give it a go. Now, people have pointed out quite extensively, and you have admitted yourself that you do not shoot very heavy bows. And people have latched onto that, saying that Lars is a fraud, that you can only do these techniques with a light bow. And that is not true. I have found in my own tests, and I've shown already in this video, that you can shoot on the right, and even by holding the arrows with your shooting hand, you can do it with a 70-pound bow. And the reason I'm holding two, this is my 100-pound bow. I'm not up to being able to shoot this regularly. And
Hi Shade, it's not very nice, but in the middle of this question, I stop you because something going wrong. And this is a problem. You're in one country, I'm in another country, and we make this video together. And by the way, this is also a problem. When I make the original video, I tell a story, but obviously I couldn't know how people think about what I'm actually telling. So here comes the problem. This text about power and accuracy, it don't make sense in that context, because obviously with that method you can shoot with very powerful bow and you can shoot accurate, but there's not a method that's better in power and accuracy than any other method. It don't make any sense when we talk about one arrow. But this text, I don't think it's about one arrow. The text talk about Al-Tabab, who was a super archer, a super horseman, who had a handful of arrows and he could shoot them really, really fast. And it was on sword and spear. So when you get attacked of this Al-Tabab super warrior, then comes the sentence, this is the best kind of archery, and there's nothing beyond that in power and accuracy. So it don't make sense that this is about one arrow. This is the total power of the attack and the total accuracy of not one arrow, but a lot of arrows. So it's not compared to, you can stand with one arrow and shoot a target standing still. This is in motion, hitting enemy, and maybe even some of the arrows don't hit at all, but the total attack of this guy was beyond power and accuracy. One more time, I don't know the truth about historical war archery, I don't know the truth about archery. What I tell is what I think is most possible.
They stand still, firing at a target board, something that was unknown in the past.
this statement needs to be clarified, because the idea that it was unknown to archers 1,000 years ago to shoot at a stationary target while standing still is false. We have historical artwork showing archers a very long time ago shooting at stationary targets. And in warfare, units of archers of course shot while standing still, but the idea that they only shot while standing still is a complete misconception. Of course, there are situations where they would needed to have shot while on the move, but we know that they shot while in stationary formations from historical records. Battle of Agincourt is a primary example. So what did you actually mean? Because we are aware that this isn't you speaking, that there was a lot lost in translation. So what are your actual opinions in regards to stationary target archery?
When in this short sentence, what I actually try to explain was this: yes, people have always shoot at stationary target, but there has been a lot of different kind of target. But basically the important, I try to say to the sentence, is that people have not just only standing still and do target archery. You can obviously learn a lot by shooting at target, but if you want to learn to shoot at people, if you want to learn to shoot at a man attacking on a horse, you need to train a lot more than just standing still and shoot target. The biggest BS, I will think, today in modern archery is the round divided flat target. And obviously this target is not an old target, it's only 250 years old, and obviously there was target before, but this really round flat target, and there was something, but it was not common, anything like that before. And this is so strong BS, because if you go out buy a bow and arrow today, you will get a round target with, and if you go in an archery club, they will shoot at a round target. And so it's difficult to actually talk about it because we have this BS. So I will start another place to actually try to explain what's going on and how I understand this. Don't think it's a secret that I train actors for Hollywood movie and television series.
There is a rule as well when you're doing archery, you have to be dressed in black, head to toe.
So I need a system to learn actors archery really fast. So I make a lot of tests, and it was quite interesting with people where I start over and over again with people who had no experience with archery. I think everybody will think they're quite good at what they do, and I've made the video with 2 girls before. Nadia and Eva is actually really good at shooting targeted motion and shooting 3-dimensional target. They have never tried to shoot a 2-dimensional target who was on a flat background.
Oh shit. Yeah. What? Oh, this way.
I think it's obvious for anyone to see that they can't hit them. It's a total other way of shooting, and now come an extra where I actually try with Nadia to throw a coin. She's obviously totally confused, because logically it should be much more difficult to hit a coin in air. But it ain't, and we have a number of description of native archers try to hit stationary target or hit the flat divided target plate and couldn't do it. And there may be a good reason for that. There was made a large television program about me where there were scientists trying to look at this thing.
I made a factual TV program about Lars Andersen for the Danish Broadcasting Corporation. I had no experience whatsoever with archery, and within 5 hours he had me up in the air, upside down, hanging on my legs, with the bow and arrow, and he threw up a little coin that I had to hit, and I managed several times.
But afterwards we let her try to shoot at that plate, and she was not able to hit. And the reason is probably that men have done archery for so many years, and before they thrown spear, so our 2 eyes and brain is built for 3-dimensional target and also target in motion. So the modern or flat 2-dimensional target plate, that is something that's not a natural target. It's something we have to learn to shoot at. It's not a bad target, but it's something you have to learn to do to be good at. The difference between flat target and moving target in air, I also try another variation. Once I took Jørgen, his trainer, and some of the girl he trained was really good at target archery, and I took some of the girls and learned them to hit target in air, and it was actually really difficult to learn that. But at the end they learned. And what happened next?
Then I had to relearn them, because it took me 2 weeks, even that some of them was Danish champions and in the best part of the shooters in Europe.
And I actually spoiled them.
Yes, I was not
and
amused.
And it was different. Jørgen used to be really glad, but he was not glad.
Definitely not.
Almost all archers today have learned to shoot at this flat target, so we don't see the bias and we don't know that this is actually a difficult target. And for beginners, that's my experience, it's actually more easy to shoot a 3-dimensional target.
These archers also started placing the arrow on the left side of the bow, just as archers do in movies.
Well, the answer to the last question certainly helps us understand the context of this statement, that archers started putting the arrow on the left, because that does, of course, seem to imply that they never shot on the left historically. And when I say left, that means over the knuckle on the inside of the bow. Because we have, of course, there's historical artwork depicting the arrow on the left side as well as the right, because at the moment I do feel there might be certain advantages with shooting on the left side of the bow at a stationary 2D target while not moving, but it might not be. But that's just, you know, my feeling and experimentation at the moment. And if that is the case, that would explain the current bias for shooting on this side of the bow at a stationary 2D target. Because there is a bias and overwhelming tradition of doing it. That is the standard for Olympic-style target shooting. But to say they never shot that way in the past either, of course, is incorrect. So what did you actually mean before things kind of got lost in translation in the statement from the video that stated archers started shooting on this side of the bow?
Again, it's very, very, very simplified, because when we get this 2-dimensional target, there's obviously some benefit of shooting 3-finger on the left, because the arrow is closer to the eye when aiming at a 2-dimensional target. And obviously in history, there's people who shoot on both sides of the bow, both on the right side and on the left side. But on 2-dimensional target, there's definitely the benefit on being a left side. So this becomes this overall standard.
This is probably due to the fact that aiming at a stationary 2-dimensional target.
The thing I'm interested in hearing from you is, how does shooting at a stationary 2D target, and also shooting on, you know, the inside of the bow over the knuckle, encourage aiming with one eye and sighting down the arrow?
Anything with arming is difficult, but to make it quite simple. We have two eyes. The way we measure distance is the difference between what we see with our two eyes. It's more complicated than that. There's something around contrast and there's other factors too. But basically, it's a difference between two eyes. So for a historical archer, it makes no sense not to use both eyes. But if you are a modern archer and shoot at a flat target and at a fixed distance, then it makes sense to actually only shoot with one eye, because you don't need the distance measurement. And it's much more complicated, and obviously there's modern archers shooting with both eyes, but basically two-dimensional target at fixed distance allowed that you can do that. And again, you can say this is actually some of the good thing about modern archery, because shooting accurately at distance is difficult. And by actually eliminate having fixed distance, also put on knock point and arrow rest, and it actually do that it's easier to actually shoot accurate at distance. But because there's no doubt that shooting fully instinctively without any of this fixed point at distance is far more complicated and require much more training.
About 10 years ago, Lars started using a bow. The arrows he carried in a quiver on his back. Surprisingly, the quiver turned out to be useless when it came to moving fast. The back quiver is a Hollywood myth and was not common in the past, but it is still spread all over the world.
And now we come to the statements in the video about back quivers, and the thing that a lot of people have missed, and I missed for a very good long time until Lars pointed it out, is that Lars has actually addressed this point of criticism multiple times already. There's actually text underneath the video, and Lars has also addressed it in his Q&A video, so he's actually addressed this multiple times, but a lot of people, and myself included, missed it and criticized Lars because back quivers, of course, did exist. The other point of criticism that people point out is that the examples that Lars demonstrates as to how impractical back quivers are were comically exaggerated. I do agree, but the things Lars is trying to point out is that there are limitations with back quivers. I mean, they can slide out if you lean just a little too far. There goes my arrows, right? And so, even though it really looks like he's showing it in an exaggerated way, these are legitimate limitations. The thing that of course exists is that back quivers are still very useful. Arrows right there, sometimes, especially from the point of release, your hand is closer to grabbing the next arrow right there than compared to a quiver on your hip. The hand needs to pass over a longer length to grab an arrow from a hip quiver versus a back quiver. So that's one advantage, but of course that might not be, covered by the fact that they can fall out and they can get tangled in things, okay? The other advantage is that personally I haven't tried this, so it'll be better for someone to actually try it to confirm my assumption here, is that back quivers might be more advantageous than side quivers when you're on a horse, okay? When you're on a horse, the flapping around, this quiver, unless it's fixed more solidly, that could be an issue. It might not be. Who knows? But the simple fact is, we have historical evidence of back quivers being used, and there is reasons for people to prefer them. But I'll pass this over to Lars now so he can explain exactly what happened with the statement about back quivers and his thoughts on back quivers in general.
Obviously, a lot of people discuss this back quiver, and I said in the start it was quite funny because that it was a Hollywood myth was just something that comes in the translation, and again it was written under the text. But I will tell a little more about back quivers, because basically the idea that arrows actually fall out of the back quiver, and when you run into a wood it will fall off. It was actually my own experience, and I was actually surprised. I tried it and I was totally surprised what's going on, and so I have to put it in my video because it was actually one of my own experience that wow, there's something wrong. And yes, there's much better back quiver than that, but this was just to say, for at that time when I made the video before, a lot of people say, why don't you use a back quiver? This is proper archery. No, back quiver exists and it's good, but it's not proper archery. And this is important also to understand the video, because this was the context of the video that the video I have made before. A lot of archers actually said this. A back quiver is proper archery. No, the back quiver exists in history, but it was not among the most thing people used, and there's a lot of problem with having a back quiver, no matter what quality it was. And we must go back to this thing of my experience as shooting after other people. And I realized that the back quiver has a really, really big issue and something we actually forget. The first thing is obviously that you have an arrow on your back. And this means if you have to shoot against other people, then okay, you don't have to look, but at least you have to focus behind yourself. And this is not really good. If you have your enemy in front of you, you actually have to focus backward to actually have your arrows. And next comes the next problem with back quivers. And this is the reason why I think in this game where I play, most people come out with a back quiver and then very, very fast they take them off and put them in the belt instead. And it was probably the most historical archers did, because historical archers don't have our standard arrows. Most historical and a lot of historical archers have different kind of arrows. There was different quality, it was not standard, it was different weight, they have different head, they have different spine, they have different feathers, and they know it, and they have to shoot them anyway. So if you have your arrows on the back, it's actually very difficult to find the really good arrow and the not so good arrow, and the arrow with a different head. So this is not, it's much better if you have there, you have at least a chance to mark them or see the different. So, and how did you know in war, in battle, when there's stress, how many arrows you have on your back when you can't see them? Yes, if you know you had 20 and you had a good time, you can count them, but if war and stress, you actually don't know how many arrows you have back. So just by putting it in the belt, you get so many benefits.
A war archer must have total control over his bow in all situations.
I feel like this statement lacks context because it kind of is implying that unless you can throw your bow in the air, catch it, caught on the string, and be able to draw it and shoot an arrow in one swift motion, it seems like that's implying if you can't do that, you're not a real war archer. So what did you actually mean in this kind of statement when it says you have to have control, I'm going to try it again, over your bow at all times?
What I try to say is obviously you don't need to be able to throw your bow up in the air, but historical archers were able to handle their bow and arrows. And obviously if you use bows and arrows as a weapon, you need to be able to actually handle it, because you can drop your bow and then you have to be able to grip it. So with any other weapon, bow and arrows, and war archer need to be able to handle it. Don't have to throw them up in the air, but just to handle them. So go back to the football player. When I talk about handle bow or arrows, it's just like a professional football player will also learn to handle, and you learn to do combination with his ball.
In the beginning, archers probably drew arrows from quivers or belts, but since then, they started holding the arrows in the bow hand, and later in the draw hand.
Once again, this sounds like a bit of a translation error because the actual wording of the sentence implies a chronological progression of archery technique across all cultures throughout the past. So, just another one of those statements that needs a bit more clarification to understand exactly what you're trying to say.
Again, this is super simplified, and this is my own story. I go from quiver to having in a bow hand to having in a draw hand. For me, it was superiors. But in history, it had happened. Obviously, a lot of people through history has probably made the same travel as me, but it's not some common thing, because when the bow and arrow was invented, probably before the bow, you have atlas and spears, and so you probably invented the bow before you actually invented the quiver. So maybe it's possible that someone from the start had held the bow like an arrow like that, or from the start had held the arrow in the bow hand. And so I said, yes, again, this short text is a mistake. This is my personal travel. This is travel other archers have done, but from a historical point, no.
And while there is no doubt that those war archers of the past were stronger and more fit than Lars's, his arrows still penetrate chainmail armor and the heavy gambazon worn beneath it.
Alright, so this part right here in the video is something that I've actually taken issue with myself, because It's actually very easy to manipulate the results of tests like this. There is a lot of variance in the quality of mail and Gambison on top of that, and to get a more representative result of if something can penetrate certain types of armour, you need to test it against a good representation of the types of armour that exist in medieval period. And so it's hard to tell what type of mail is actually used in this demonstration. If it is butted or if it is riveted plays a massive impact on how resistant and effective chainmail is. Now, butted mail is when the rings are only butted together, there's nothing actually holding the ring together, and riveted is when there is an overlap in the ring and they're actually riveted together, which is like nearly 10 times stronger than basic butted mail. And so any test that's done against butted mail can basically be disregarded completely. The type of Gambison is also massively significant.
There was a lot of discussion on my armor test. First of all, I'm not really interested in armor because basically men have done archery for 60,000 years and most archers have never shot at armor. So this was more my surprise, something that happened. I shoot with this arrow with my 50-pound bow on my armor. That's the only one I have. And you can see it's closed ring. You can discuss the metal and the number of ring, but it's okay armor. My Gambison at that time I think was okay. It was something I bought, but today I'll say no, it's not a good Gambison. So you can say the only thing this test show was my arrow, 50-pound bow, goes past through this armor, and you can say the Gambison could be better.
Modern archers use only one hand, but in the past, some archers allegedly used both hands to give the arrow more power.
Interestingly, this is kind of a chicken and egg thing to bring up, but it's still useful to bring up to inform people to the best level possible as to actually what's happening with what Lars is showing here, because flicking the bow forward in this direction actually doesn't really impart any extra energy to the arrow, but what this really looks like is that Lars is actually doing a type of katra technique. Now, the katra isn't there to add energy to the arrow, but it's a technique to help move the bow shaft out of the way of the flight of the arrow, reducing the amount of friction and therefore energy that the arrow loses when passing the bow shaft, and it can increase the energy or flight speed of the arrow in that way. And so not increasing any actual energy, but reducing the amount of energy lost from the interaction the arrow has with the bow shaft. So that is a brief point of clarification that I would like to add, but is there any additional information you can add, Lars, or explanation as to what exactly you're saying here when the video says you can add additional energy into the arrow and you show it by kind of flicking the arrow forward as you shoot?
The double draw, some of the things I actually think that time was wrong. I couldn't see, I have a chronograph, I could see that my arrow was flying 70 or 10% faster when I do this, and I don't do this, I do like that. I'm moving it forward and I have this and actually release my finger. So it's a little like forward motion and that. And at that time I honestly believe that it was the most forward motion would actually give the extra energy. I couldn't measure extra energy, but I couldn't explain it. So I believe it was this forward pushing. Today, because of some tests I have done, I think it's a little like when people make katra. It could be the friction of the arrow against the bow that actually do the difference. But I think that it's more with the how the arrow move in the air, because arrow obelisk is compressed when it's been moved, and it's like a feather where there's a lot of things going on with the motion and the bow when it's passed through the bow. So I think what's happening, because I can see when I shoot with this method, then I can shoot with almost any arrows. It doesn't really matter the weight of the arrow or the spine of the arrow or how heavy the arrowhead is. So more or less this method allowed me to shoot with a lot of different arrow when I shoot. So I think, and this is again, there's somebody who have to make some tests, but I think what's happening is the compression or the flight of the arrows become a little better, and that's the reason why I can shoot with more different kind of arrow. So maybe combined with how much it actually touches the bow, there is some physical difference between doing this motion, and it gives some extra energy, and I don't think it's BS because I have tried to test it.
couple of things people have criticised you in regards to this. One, that it was very dangerous and irresponsible of you even attempting it. And two, it is a more broader criticism about most of the kind of stunts that you show. Without every video clip you show succeeding at these stunts, there is 100 clips of you failing at the attempts, and that you can't actually do these things consistently and reliably. So the question is, how many times did you attempt these stunts before you actually succeeded?
Trick shooting is fun. And the question, how difficult is it? When I travel around, there's really often archers who ask me, Lars, how can I learn to do the thing you do? And I used to say to people, the first thing is you have to find someone who will pay you for doing that full time in many years, because with tricks and difficult shooting, it's so much about training. It's obviously about skills, and it's obviously about luck too. Like with any other person who do tricks, there's obviously something with luck. But film this just to show. At the morning, after doing breakfast with my lovely wife, then I go and do archery. And this is just a personal project where I try to find my own limit. What is possible to me to do. I purposely film by talking because then I show that I can do tricks just without thinking. And obviously there's still some luck, but I can do a variation. Here's another one.
Round an object. Some of the tricks Lars performs are difficult. To hit an incoming arrow. But some tricks are easy enough that they can be done in succession.
And again, I filmed it just to show. Obviously there's some luck. It actually happened. It's not just luck. I can do combination of tricks. I have done it several times. And still, that's the thing. I have this rule. If I make trick shooting and show it in a video, it's thing that I can actually do over and over again. Not every time, but thing I can actually do over and over again. The only thing I cannot do over and again was the ones that I shot a draw in the middle of the arrow. This was poor luck. Not to hit the row, but it actually was in the middle of the arrow. That was poor luck. Obviously people discuss my safety, and this is logical. I do think that look really dangerous. I shoot where there's other people involved and people shoot at me, but first there's other people, other archers who have done tricks arching involving other people, and both of these two, they really know what they're doing, and this is the important part. You obviously can't see in my video how much preparation there's before and how much we actually care about safety. And again, I do archery full time, and there's people around me who know, and we discuss this and spend a lot of time on safety, and nobody had ever been hurt. The only thing that actually happened was I've done something with my back and things like that, and my arm and things like breaking it around and something, but nobody had get hurt. And this obviously because we do a lot of things about safety and a lot of things you can't see. For instance, I work a lot with aerozone. What happened if it actually goes wrong? And because nothing can be 100% safe, so it's not like I say, yes, what direction would the arrow actually go if it go wrong and things like that. And again, combined with, I obviously don't use a strong bow as you do as in Arabic archery is written. You have to use a half strong bow for trick shooting. So obviously never I use a strong bow, but it's something we work a lot with, and the purpose of what I'm doing is to show, is this historical text actually possible? So the only way actually to show that is to do it. And I do archery in this big Danish archery club, and they will obviously get a problem if somebody get hurt. So they obviously know what I'm doing, and obviously spend some time, look what I'm doing, and see, yes, obviously no, nothing can be 100% safe, but we really try, and I really try to get it as safe as possible. And other people should definitively not try to do the same thing I do, because this is only because I do all this thing. It's actually reasonably safe to do it.
There are even myths of archers who could grab an enemy's arrow and shoot it back at him.
So if we're being fully critical here, and I admit this is a bit nitpicky, but hey, I am a nitpicker, and like I said, not going to hold anything back. Can you actually do it?
Grabbing an incoming arrow. No, no. I could say that it was Claus that actually made a mistake and this was translation error and things like that, but it won't be nice.
So one of the nice things about working with Lars is that he actually learns from new information. And I remember we had this discussion about, could you grab an incoming arrow? Lars came and said, you can grab it, it's hard, and I found a way to do it. I don't think it happened a lot, but I do think it happened in combat once in a while. What do you think about that now?
I don't think it anymore. And obviously an arrow have this, it would be too dangerous to actually, with a war arrow, with a big sharp arrowhead, it was too dangerous. What if it was poisoned or anything? So I honestly know this was a total mistake, and it was not because of Claus, it was because it was me, and I was learned since, and I think, yes, it's, today I would say it was super good tricks, but not with war arrows.
In the 1938 movie, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Robin Hood splits an arrow down the middle. Some consider this the ultimate archery trick. They're wrong.
No!
The ultimate archery trick is splitting an incoming arrow in two with one of your own. We do not recommend you trying this at home.
The ultimate archery trick. Now, I agree that this might be the ultimate archery trick, depending on range, because by what's shown in the video, you're decently close to the incoming arrow. Now, this isn't to say what you've shown here isn't massively impressive, but I do wonder if shooting a moving target from 200 meters distance might actually be even more impressive, depending on the size of the target, I suppose. So that one really can be up for debate, but what can't be said is that what you've shown isn't a phenomenally impressive trick shot, absolutely. But as to the ultimate trick shot, yeah, maybe, depends. So out of interest, what actually do you think would be the ultimate trick shot in archery?
Yes, you can say technically hit a small target, small moving target at distance should be more technically difficult. I do something like that in an upcoming video where I make fun, just for fun, trick shooting. But in reality, if somebody point an arrow at you and shoot and you have to hit it, it's so much more complicated, it's so more difficult. And again, you should obviously not do it, and I should definitely not try it. I do it because with so much preparation, so much think about safety, and actually we spent some year before we have done it with harmless arrow, and I've done it so many times with harmless arrow, and before we actually tried, So I should definitely not do it. I do it definitely just to show that this historical description could be done. And the only way actually to show it could be done was to do it. And that the arrow actually split was basically a mistake, because part of the safety is my arrow is heavier than the incoming arrow, so I'm sure that this incoming arrow that go out to the side when the arrow hit each other. So my arrow was quite heavy, and the incoming arrow was made on bamboo. And that means with quite luck, the arrowhead hit just behind the arrowhead, and then it split. It was a total surprise. I didn't know it was possible. I've done it a couple of times since, but basically you say hitting an incoming arrow is not a lucky shot, definitely. But that it actually split is just luck. And then comes the next part. Is it the most difficult or the ultimate archery tricks? I don't think. And the reason why, obviously people criticize what I'm doing, and those people said, you just do lucky shot. And I think once, maybe I should actually find the lucky shot, the one I can only do by luck. And then I designed the tricks, spent some time learning to do it, and do it, and film it with a number of camera. And I'll never show it, and it will not be in my new video, and because I actually think this is just a lucky shot, and everyone would see it will say, okay, this is luck. So I decided that my archery start up as my personal project, which was just where I try to find my own, what could I do, and then it became this big public project. And I think at one time I probably stopped the public project and just do archery for myself again, and then I probably make the last Lars Andersen video, and this video will probably end with the ultimate archery tricks.
Well, it looks like we're coming to the end of this very detailed video where we've been able to take an in-depth look and review at Lars's viral video, A New Level of Archery. So I just want to thank all of you for watching, and also thank you to Lars for letting me be part of this incredibly fun project. And so after everything that we've talked about in this video, I'm actually left with a feeling of motivation and enthusiasm. I'm excited to continue this study further to find out what historical archery might have actually been like to our best understanding. And with that said, I really look forward to what you produce in the future as well, Lars, so I'll hand it back to you.
Shad, I'm really glad that you helped me with the project. And to all of you who actually reach the end of this super long video, I'm really glad that you actually watch this video and give me a chance to actually tell this very long story. And remember, I don't know the truth about historical war archery, and again, there's so much that needs to be discovered, so much that needs to be tested, so much that needs to be questioned, and it's actually quite a fun ride. So I actually hope that more archers will actually join this about, can we actually find back to this historical war archery. And anyway, thanks for actually watching this long video, and do a lot of archery.